did the nuclear war rehearsal take place? What does the field where more than 100 atomic explosions have been made look like? What location is a must-see for fans of post-apocalyptic themes? All this in the new episode of Welcome to Kazakhstan project. The territory of the Semey nuclear test site is 18,500 square kilometers. The experimental field is not the largest part of it, but the most interesting. Explosions have not thundered here for more than 30 years, and over time, tourist routes have appeared. This is Welcome to Kazakhstan project. My name is Zakirjan Mamlutov. Let's broaden our horizons. In fact, the polygon's territory is divided among 3 regions, but you will not find any signposts here. The polygon lives by its own laws. There are very few good roads, rather directions instead. Here you have a feeling of getting into some kind of post-apocalyptic film. The phone is out of network coverage, there is not a soul around, only the field. 100 kilometers from Kurchatov, the first local man-made site is waiting for us. Behind my back, it would seem like an ordinary lake with ordinary water. In fact, this is a funnel from a nuclear explosion that occurred here in 1965. The lake is called Atam Korea. The radiation level exceeds the norm, but not much, and tourists come here with pleasure to take pictures. So, we are at the Balapan site, near the well number 1004. This is the first underground industrial atomic explosion in the Soviet Union for peaceful purposes. This explosion took place in January 1965. Its yield was 140 kilotons. A well was drilled with a depth of 176 meters. The charge was set. Then it was blown up. As a result, a funnel with a diameter of more than 500 meters and a depth of about 100 meters was formed. This was the first stage of the experiment. The second stage of the experiment was filling this funnel with water. A canal had been made and the waters of the Shagan and Ashusur rivers filled it. As a result, such a reservoir had appeared. A series of these explosions was carried out in order to create artificial reservoirs in the arid regions of the country. That is, these are peaceful purposes. And there were also similar explosions for industrial purposes. These are extinguishing of oil fountains, seismic sounding, and the creation of artificial reservoirs. The next point of our route is the experimental field. Of all the test sites of the Semey polygon, air and ground explosions were made there only. The rest of the sites, Degelen, Sarıozen, Aktanberlik, Balapan, were used exclusively for underground explosions. We are approaching locations where the radiation level exceeds the norm. Therefore, according to all the rules, we will put on special protective suits. That's it. I'm ready. Let's move on.
Вот видишь, камешком подношу. Растет.
Fortunately for us, a slight excess of the radiation level is observed in less than 1/10 of the experimental field area, at points that were once the epicenters of explosions. We are in the center of the experimental field, the P1 test site. This place is known for the fact that it was here that the first nuclear explosion in the Soviet Union took place on August 29, 1949. The charge yield was 22 kilotons. As a result, a small funnel was formed. The fact is that the explosion was ground-based. At a height of 30 meters, a steel truss with an elevator was built, along which the device was then raised above the surface and detonated. Also in this place, the first thermonuclear test was carried out, the detonation of a thermonuclear bomb, and the explosion of the first hydrogen bomb of the Soviet Union, the yield of which was 1,600 kilotons. For comparison, the yield of bombs that were dropped on the Japanese city Hiroshima and Nagasaki was 20 kilotons. Fans of nuclear aftermath games will feel right at home in these fields. There are bomb shelters throughout the polygon where you can go down and hide from the scorching sun. It seems that some hostile creature is about to jump out at you from around the corner, but all monsters live in computer games. There is no one in the bomb shelters of the Semey test site, only the wind is wandering around. The bunkers are made to last, but time did not spare them. Most of the bomb shelters are flooded, and it is not possible to investigate them in more detail. Basically, there is no need. Moreover, it's very cold and somehow gloomy here. In recent years, the topic of the nuclear apocalypse has been more and more taking over cinema and literature. Excursions to Pripyat have long become commonplace. In Kazakhstan, the city of Kurchatov and the experimental field have enormous touristic potential. And it's great that we're looking at artifacts of the Cold War on abandoned test sites, and not in a world going through nuclear winter. And these strange constructions are called Goose structures. Once, different parameters were measured with their help. If you look from the air, it turns out that they all diverge in rings from a certain point, and this point is the epicenter of the explosion. The Goose structures were divided into three types, A, B, and V. Scientists called them among themselves Annushka, Bukashka, and Verochka. You can also notice the trench that connected all the Goose structures. Bukashka and Verochka are real buildings, but Annushka is a pure stiffener in the form of a shark fin. The last tests at the experimental field were carried out in 1962, and since that time the Goose structures have been idle. One of the attractions of the experimental field is the Trotyl Lake. It is formed by an explosion, but not atomic. The fact is that in the 60s there was a moratorium on nuclear tests, so they experimented with TNT. The lake is the result of an explosion of 100 tons of this substance. The last explosion occurred at the test site in 1989, and on August 29, 1991, it was finally closed by the decree of the President of the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic, Nursultan Nazarbayev. From that day on, the Semey test site ceased to serve as a place where terrible weapons were tested. A new, peaceful page of history was opened.
Сегодня нам сложно понять.
Today, it is difficult for us to understand the fears and worries of the nuclear race era. And only such places as the experimental field of the Semey nuclear test site are a living reminder of those years, attracting more and more tourists, but under a peaceful sky.